This is the homework helper for Chapter 3, Section 3 in the 8th grade book entitled Interpreting Graphs. Now, question 1 and 2 are all related to the prompt at the beginning of the page there. It says the table gives the speed of 3 dogs in miles per hour at the given times. Tell which dog corresponds to each situation described below. And then they give you 3 different dogs and some times and the speed they're moving in miles per hour. And we're supposed to match up the situation with the dog number. So number 1 says LaShawn walks his dog. Then he's letting the dog off the leash and it runs around the yard. Then they go into the house and the dog stands eating from his dog dish and drinking from his water bowl. So let's look at what's happening there. He's walking the dog, so the dog is moving at the beginning. And then all of a sudden he lets the dog off the leash and it runs around the yard. So it's moving, but it's going to be moving a lot faster. And then they go into the house and the dog stands eating from his dog dish and drinking from his water bowl. Well, since he's standing still there at the bowl, he's not moving. So all of a sudden, that speed is going to drop off to 0 at the end because he's not moving. So when we look at the 3 situations there, the one that seems to match up with best is number 2. Now, you might be a little bit fooled by looking at 1 and 2 because the ends here both are the same with the double 0. The dog is standing still, drinking and eating from his bowl there. That would match for either 1 or 2. It's the beginning part that's kind of the giveaway because it says he's walking his dog right in the beginning. Well, if he's walking his dog, the dog has to be moving. But as we see when we look at number 1 here, the speed there is 0, which means the dog isn't moving. But the question says clearly that the dog is walking. So that's going to be dog number 2. And you can use the same theories to help you work through question 2. Read through the situation, match up some speeds that would make sense. It's either got to be dog 1, dog 2, or dog 3. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one here. Questions 3 and 4 also use the same prompt. It's asking me to tell which graph corresponds to the situation in exercises 1 and 2. So when we go back and look at number 1 here, all right, again, we're saying the dog is walking, so the speed is moving there, and then all of a sudden the dog starts running around the yard. So we're going to see the speed go up, and then the dog's going to go into the house, so the speed's going to come back down, and then finally the dog is going to go ahead and stand still, not be moving at all, even though time is happening. Well, the graph that shows that there is question number 4. All right, question 4 clearly shows the speed here he's walking, then all of a sudden he takes off running, and then he slows down when he comes back into the house, and then all of a sudden the speed drops to 0 when he's standing still at the dish. So this is the graph here that matches up with question number 1, which should make identifying number 3 rather simple. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the last one here. The last one is asking me to create a graph that illustrates the temperature inside the car. All right, so as you can see, the graph is kind of already set up for us there. They've got the different times they're listed for us and the corresponding temperatures, and all we have to do is make a little graph of that. Now, the one thing the graph is missing that would be helpful, the graph is missing a title. So let's go ahead and put a title on this to say we've done this correctly. So we're going to go ahead and entitle this Car Temperature. Realize that this is going to be a line graph because it's looking at something over time, and that's what a line graph does. A line graph is a graph that compares data over time. So, at 8:30, the temperature is already 74 degrees. So the middle mark between 60 and 80 would be 70, so I want to go up about halfway between 70 and 80, which would be 75, maybe down just a smidge. So that's going to be right about there. And then at 9 o'clock, when we get to our summer job, the car temperature is up to 77 degrees. Now realize there's a gap of an hour and a half here in these jumps, so halfway would be 45 minutes. So for instance, I'll go quite halfway here. So I'm going to go a little bit less than halfway, but I've got to go up to 77 degrees, so just beneath the 80 mark.
And then by the time we get to 12:05, the car is up to 180 degrees. Well, this would be 12:15, halfway between 11:30 and 1 o'clock. So we're going to go a little bit less than that, but all the way up to 128. Again, we know the marker between 120 and 140 is 130. Now, you might be bothered that there's no markers there on those increments here that they've labeled. It doesn't have to be. The only thing that's important is the increments themselves are even. Whether or not there's actually data that goes there, that's completely irrelevant. The pool at 12:15 when we get there is 92 degrees, so the car has cooled down a little bit. Obviously, somebody's run the air conditioning, at least hopefully for a little bit there. So at 12:15, which would be, in this case, perfectly halfway between 11:30 and 1 o'clock, we're up to down a little bit, but all the way up to 92. Halfway between 80 and 100 would be 90, so go up just a smidge. Realize these two dots are not far apart because this is just 12:05 and 12:15. At 2:30, it's going up to 136 degrees when we leave the pool. We must be in Arizona or Texas or somewhere warm, and we've got to make the graph go all the way up to 136. So halfway between 120 and 140 would be 130, so we want to go a little bit higher than that. At 2:40, when I get to the library, the temperature has come down. Obviously, the air conditioning, again, has done some work. It's down to 95 degrees at 2:40. Realize, again, this next dot is not going to be much further past this last one because it's only 10 minutes there. So just go a little bit past the 2:30, and we're going up to 95 degrees. Again, halfway between 80 and 100 would be 90, so go up just a smidge from there. And then when I leave the library, which is my last dot that I'm going to put on here, it's 77 degrees at 5:10. Well, we know the end of the graph here is 5:30. Halfway between 4 and 5:30 would be 4:45. So past halfway, probably just go close to the end there. Go up to 77 degrees. Halfway between 60 and 80 would be 70, so you want to get closer to 80. And there's all my dots, and now I just have to connect my dots to make my line graph. And there you go. Kind of a slanted looking letter M there, but there's the graph that represents the temperature inside the car as described.